Greetings folks, back in Hong Kong now. Today we're testing out the new GFX 500mm lens. This is by far the longest lens in the system. It actually doubles the previous longest prime lens. And with the new camera supporting bird detector autofocus and the latest algorithms, it seems like a perfect opportunity to test out this lens. This gives you the equivalent of something like a 398mm f4.4, something around there in terms of the equivalent in 35mm full frame. It's not that big and heavy considering its medium format. So today we're going to ask two main questions. Can you shoot birds with it, and should you? Quick reminder folks that the 5-day deal for 2024 is now live and you can save up to 95% off a bunch of great products whilst helping out some charities supporting kids and hunger around the world. The Natural and Available Light Masterclass that I made with Steph and a bunch of other models is included in the Pro Bundle, and if you use our link last, you'll be added to our list and I'll be sending out a free bonus just to our community of the Art Boudoir tape shoot that I made with Steph. And of course, the last thing Steph or I want to do is kind of exclude existing customers. So if you've already purchased either of these courses, just let us know after the sale ends and I'll be happy to switch it out for another course of equal value for you. All the courses in the bundle are brand new. It's an incredible offer and it ends in just a few days. Full details in the description below. Now, one reason that I'm quite hopeful for this lens as a bird photographer personally is that on every shoot at some point you wish you had a longer focal length and you end up cropping your shots, and having more resolution would be great. So to be able to shoot birds on a 100 megapixel body would be phenomenal, because if actually the shot you needed was at 600mm but you only have a reach of 400, you can crop that in and still have a huge resolution file to work with at the end. Or you can crop just much further into the shot and retain a really high quality image. So fingers crossed it gives us the goods today. Now, as we're going to see in this video, even shooting with the latest body, this isn't the easiest to get consistently great photos of birds, especially birds in flight. But having your camera set up correctly is going to maximize the chances of that. If you're a GFX user, check out my expert setup guide. It takes you through the GFX 100S Mark II that we're using today, plus every other camera in the system, all the way back to the 50S and R. It shows you what every single physical control on each camera does, as well as all of the customizations I recommend you make straight out of the box, and then goes through a complete menu deep dive showing you every single menu item in these complex and highly customizable cameras. You can download it or stream it instantly. Link is in the description below. I'm just going to switch in and show you the Atomos now, which to be fair does slow performance down even more, but apart from this being kind of sluggish, in video there was so many times where the bird was clearly visible and I just wasn't moving to it, and in stills where the whole head is visible but it stays on the neck or body. Sometimes it goes to the eye, but it's just really inconsistent. I think the shots where we are nailing focus are looking lovely, but the strike rate is surprisingly low. So my finger is on focus the whole time, and it fluctuates between, it's still showing me green, but it fluctuates between his body, his head, occasionally his eye, but it's just not staying with him. And I gotta say, it's, I don't know. Well, we'll look at the files. They may be the determining factor, but the performance is kind of a, yes, you can do it, but I don't know if you should. So now it's just focusing on the beak, not the eye. Now it's focusing on its thigh. Now the whole body, now it's got the eye, so now it's doing surprisingly well. It's just, it's saying that it's in focus when sometimes it isn't. So sometimes it's nailing it, sometimes it's focusing on the wrong part of the bird, sometimes it says it has focus, but it's actually noticeably in front or behind. But have to be fair, autofocus is a combination of body and lens, and birds is a reasonably difficult subject here. And this is a video about the lens specifically, so we'll try to focus in more on that. But this is the newest body, so I think this is the fairest autofocus test we could give it in terms of birds, and that's what this lens is for. Now, given that this has a 0.79 crop factor, this lens becomes the equivalent of something like a 395mm f4.6 or so, which puts it very close to Nikon's own 400mm f4.5. I'll discuss that more in the conclusion. Okay, let me start out by saying this is a remarkable lens, and I think it's fantastic that Fuji are bringing this to the market. It opens up so many things that weren't possible. No matter what else, you get the length and you get a decent aperture, decent size, weight and price. It's weather sealed. Fuji lenses range from good to great. It's not going to be terrible. We know all of that. So 400mm really brings it into the range of, not that you will necessarily shoot this, but that range is great for sports, birds, wildlife, taking it on safari. So if you're someone who is using a GFX camera for your landscapes, your portraits, your studio work, and you want to occasionally take it out and do those things, a lens like this is going to give you that possibility. And at $3,500, it's not nothing, but it's not over the top. You would pay that for a full frame camera of similar kind of specification. There is one thing though, being a 5.6, if you're not familiar with shooting, for example, birds, you generally want to be at 1/1000th of a second or above. So that's going to put you into really high ISO territory unless you're in full sunlight. Here, that could be a challenge because we have a netting and it's an overcast day. So I could be up 1600, 3200, 6400. We'll just have to see how it goes. My videographer just got shat on. Let's go. Now I've got to say the 500mm lens is smaller than I was expecting, and like a lot of Fuji lenses, it feels well built even though it has a lot of plastic in it, which means it's relatively light and it does handle well. I really didn't have any problem hand holding. Often for a 500mm lens I'd be thinking about using a monopod, but it wasn't fatiguing. And great that this, like so many of their lenses, is fully weather sealed. It's got all of the gaskets and rear sealing on it. I also have to say I love that they have the Arca Swiss foot carved into the tripod collar, and that foot is removable, but just so nice that you don't have to add a plate to it. Companies like Nikon could really learn a thing or two in this design element. Taking a look around the lens, you can see it's fairly minimal. It's got the focus distance. Do you want it to focus all the way or only 5 meters to infinity? Optical image stabilization on or off? Your focus settings, and then it's got a number of different customizable buttons on the lens. And for those who care, this is made in Japan. Another thing I would say, and again, this is medium format, so it's not a criticism. No one else is doing this. Props to Fuji. But it's still not a sports camera. You fire off several frames, even using top spec SD cards, and a camera like this not having CF Express Type B or even A, it really shows. Then you're waiting several seconds for it to clear one or a handful of files. So if you want to switch between stills and video, you can't, and it does slow down. There's just nothing you can say about it. I have it on boost performance, but still it's good for medium format, but if you're coming from 35mm, you're going to find it quite sluggish for this kind of shooting in terms of overall camera operability, and as we're starting to find, autofocus. Okay, a couple of considerations. What looks like it could be something a bit offensive on my t-shirt is actually a thumb. But all these dark patches, that's not part of the design. That's sweat. It's blazing hot here in Hong Kong, which means I would like to be in the shade, but I'm regularly up at ISO 10,000, 12,800, which is not where I want to be. So I need the birds in good light and us not, preferably not in direct sunlight. So I've just found a nice area that has a good amount of separation so we can still get a soft background with our 5.6 lens. I just need a bird to come here. So if anyone knows any bird calls, please send me a tutorial. It could be really helpful right now. Oh, here's one and it's a pretty one. Okay. Half a bird. Okay. If I can't say this, if you're coming from other medium format that don't have bird detector or long lens, you're gonna love this. But if you're coming from full frame, APS-C, micro four thirds that have really snappy autofocus, for birds you're gonna find this frustrating. For people, for landscape, it's working, I'm sure, great. This body does anyway, sorry. That wasn't because you're slow. But with birds, when they're moving around quickly, the time this takes, you reframe, and then you're waiting that 1 second for it to grab focus, they've moved. I just saw a whole bunch of great shots there. I think I got 1.5, literally half the bird, out of what could have been 10 great shots. So when it hits, the files on the back of the camera are looking spectacular, but it doesn't hit that much. So it's kind of a frustrating, but hopefully at the end of the day, still rewarding process. More birds, please. What was it? Biscuit. Biscuit! See, it can see there's something, it's not pulling focus from the background. There's 2 birds there, clear, they're not obstructed. It's going green, but it's not on focus on anything. Okay, I have to like manually focus it to reset it. It's like the camera was frozen or something, and again, now it's just stuck in the background. It won't move on to them. You see that? Okay, now manually focusing. Doing nothing. Come on, get the bird. Seriously, what are you doing? And now they just flew away. I'm here to test a lens. I'm not here to get bird content for the park, or I'm not letting down a client. I'm just letting down my own expectations. But if I were on a real shoot and had that performance, I would not use the camera again for that purpose. That's so frustrating when it's saying I'm in focus and it will take photos, but it's in focus on the background and you can clearly see the birds there. Oh, there's that beautiful dark green one. I really wonder, what have I done? There must be something wrong. It's just not focusing now. I haven't done anything. What's going on? It's in the correct autofocus mode. Let's just try resetting it. I don't want to be that guy, but I've had so many Fuji cameras from APS-C and GFX, they just lock up or freeze or something stops working and you have to take the battery in and out. Why? They're a huge company, they make great cameras, there shouldn't be these little bugs. Yeah, that did it. Now it's focusing again. Now that all the birds in both directions have gone, I can shoot the wall. Let's shoot the wall. There's a red birdhouse. Twice now, that beautiful dark green one has come, and 1, my settings were wrong. 2, the camera wouldn't focus. I'm never gonna get that beautiful little Midori. So they just kicked us out. Closes earlier than I expected. It's not dark for another like 4.5 hours. But anyway, I have to be honest, bit of a frustrating experience in that situation for birds. It was lower light. If you were out in a open space, it may be that much easier, or with birds that aren't moving so much. But I do think I got some nice shots. So let's go back in the studio and see what the strike rate is. Maybe my perception of it missing a lot is wrong. So look, now we're in studio, you can kind of get a better idea of the size of this. It's like a slightly big 70 to 200. I'm genuinely impressed that it's not bigger and heavier. As I mentioned in the video, this is quite close once you apply the 0.79 crop factor that these cameras have to being a 400mm f4.5. So I had a quick look and compared it to Nikon's, and surprisingly they're the same filter thread. They're very similar in weight. This is maybe 100 odd grams heavier. It's about half an inch longer. I think this part of the lens is a bit fatter, but overall the dimensions are quite similar, and the overall price, this guy is actually about $300 more expensive, $250 more expensive. But then you're talking medium format as opposed to full frame. So I gotta say, size, weight, and price all seem pretty reasonable. Now, just to throw in there, here's another. This is a lens that everyone remarks at how tiny it is. This is the Nikon 500mm f5.6 PF lens for f-mount. So it is f-mount, but when this came out, it like rocked people's world. It was really the size of the 70 to 200 and just incredibly tiny. Putting them side by side, you can see there is a difference, but it's not huge. It's just that the new guy has a much bigger lens mount, so that necessitates having a bigger, fatter end on the lens. But they're both still 95mm front filter threads. And again, they're both very similar in price. This time, actually, the old Nikon F-mount is $100 more expensive for the same specification, less, oh no, maybe the same number of control buttons, but, you know, 5 or something year old lens compared to a brand new one designed for medium format. So I really have to say there's a lot on paper good with this. As I mentioned, shooting the birds, it wasn't just a walk in the park though. As I said, if you're a GFX user, check out my expert setup guide, full details below, and you can also download sample files over at my website learn.mattgranger.com to see how this lens and camera combo did. This is shooting with the GFX 100S Mark II. I have to say, if you're coming from pretty much any other medium format camera other than the flagship in the range, you'll probably be really pleasantly surprised at how well this combo and this lens is doing for birds using bird autofocus. It's good. If you're coming from 35mm, you might still be quite frustrated. At times I was, where it just takes that much longer to focus than you have often when you're shooting birds. So I would say birds, slow moving birds or animals that are kind of stationary at the watering hole, at the food bay, are a definite possibility when you are all set up right. Birds in flight, animals running, a cheetah chasing down a gazelle, I would say most likely forget about it. Of course, it depends on what you're coming from and how you shoot. If you're, you know, a 50 years wildlife veteran who's coming from manual focusing, well, this is focused by wire, but you may get the job done. But if you're relying on the autofocus subject detect to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, it's good, just don't expect 35mm performance. And that's not a criticism of this kit. As I said, it's still pretty much the best and the only lens of this option that you have within this baby medium format part of the market. So I would definitely recommend it for people who want to do some wildlife and birds, that kind of thing. Just don't expect that it's going to be able to track fast moving subjects. But having said all of that, when it hits, when you get the settings right, when the bird is there long enough, when you have enough light to work with, when all of those things converge, holy shit, the image quality is astonishing. Just take a look at a couple of my favorite shots here. The resolution and the detail and the color, it's just beautiful coming off this second generation 102 megapixel CMOS medium format sensor. And the 500mm lens renders beautifully for feathers and the colors in the plumage of the birds. Really happy with the keeper shots that I got. Just, I would say my keeper rate was a little bit lower than I expected, and on the day it was a little bit of a frustrating process. Check out all the links in the description below. Let me know any questions you have. I'll see you guys soon.